If you enjoy sci-fi stories where humanity survives not by strength, but by nerve, intelligence and sheer audacity, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what you think the galaxy's deadliest predator should have done when it met a human instead of killing one. They called it a mercy assignment. That was how the Galactic Council justified sending a single human mercenary to a planet no fleet had ever returned from. Not mercy for the target, of course, but mercy for their own political conscience. If the human died, and everyone expected he would, no major power would have to explain the loss. Humanity sat too low on the interstellar hierarchy to matter much. One expendable species, one expendable man, and a centuries-old problem would finally resolve itself. The Predator's designation filled the council chamber like a curse. No one spoke its true name anymore. Records described a living engine of extinction, an organism older than most member civilizations, capable of dismantling armadas the way storms dismantled cities. Entire trade routes had gone dark because of it. Colonies were erased so completely that even their orbital debris vanished within weeks. Every attempt to destroy it had followed the same pattern. Overwhelming force, brief signals of success, then silence. The counselors watched the human on the hollow projection with open skepticism. Kale Voss did not look like a solution. He wore no house crests, no military insignia. His armor was battered, modular, repaired so many times it barely resembled its original design. His face was calm in the way of someone who didn't waste energy on fear, not because he lacked it, but because he had learned when it mattered. He listened as the assignment was explained. Eliminate the predator. Confirm death. Retrieve no samples. No extraction craft would wait for him. Navigation markers would be active for 1 standard hour after landing, then shut down. If he succeeded, payment would be transferred to a human-controlled escrow. If not, the account would close along with the incident report. Kale asked only one question. Why hasn't it been killed already? That alone unsettled the chamber. Most mercenaries asked about payment or armament. Some asked for additional operatives. Humans, the council had learned, were unpredictable, but this one's curiosity felt dangerous. It adapts, a counselor replied. Learns. Every strike teaches it something new. Kale nodded as if this confirmed a suspicion rather than raised concern. He accepted the contract with a biometric seal and turned to leave before anyone could reconsider. They did not try to stop him. By the time the chamber doors closed behind him, most of the council had already written him off as another necessary failed attempt. The transport that carried him crossed into interdicted space 3 days later. Sensors failed first. Then long-range comms dissolved into static. Kale didn't fight it. He had read the after-action reports of those who had tried to force technology through the distortion field. Their ships had lasted minutes. He piloted manually, hands steady, trusting his instincts more than instruments that no longer obeyed physics as he understood it. The planet appeared as a fractured world of ash and bioluminescence, its surface webbed with scars that glowed faintly, as if the ground itself remembered violence. Storm systems rotated slowly, deliberately, like predators circling prey. There were no orbital satellites, no debris fields, nothing that suggested recent civilization. It looked empty in the way graveyards look peaceful from a distance. Kale brought his ship down hard, too hard for a controlled landing, but exactly as intended. He wanted it to look like a crash. Hunters observed patterns. Survivors broke them. The moment he stepped outside, the silence pressed against him. No wind. No insect noise. No birds or equivalents. Life existed here, but it had learned not to announce itself. He knelt, touched the soil with gloved fingers and felt vibration beneath the surface, slow, rhythmic, massive. Something moved far below, something that did not rush because it had never needed to. Hours passed as he advanced inland, tracking disturbances too subtle for most species to notice. Trees grew fused into natural barricades. Stone formations bore marks of pressure rather than erosion. This was not a world shaped around the predator. It was a world reshaped by it. When the ground finally split, Kale had already moved. The attack flattened everything within 30 meters. Stone vaporized. Trees folded inward as if crushed by an invisible fist. The predator rose in segments of armored tissue and limb, enormous and asymmetrical, its form shifting as if fixed shapes were a constraint rather than a rule. Heat bled from it in waves. Most beings froze the first time they saw it. Kale did not. He ran, not away but laterally, forcing the creature to turn, to recalibrate, to expend effort adjusting to prey that did not behave as expected. Its strike missed him by less than a meter, vaporizing the ground where he'd been a heartbeat earlier. Sensors in his visor screamed, then went dark. Good, he thought. Now it's honest. He fired once, not at its core but at a joint already bearing fissures. The shot didn't pierce deeply, but the predator recoiled. Not in pain. In surprise. Cale saw it then, clear as daylight. The predator wasn't uninjured. Scars mapped its body, deep and old, layered atop newer wounds that hadn't fully healed. Whatever war had forged this legend, it had not been one-sided. The creature roared, not triumphantly but in warning, and brought its weight down again. Cale slid behind cover as debris rained down. He had come here to kill it. That had been the contract. That had been the expectation of everyone who mattered. But standing there, heart hammering, watching a being the galaxy feared bleed and adapt and hesitate, he realized something the Council never had. This was not a mindless destroyer. This was a survivor. And as the predator turned toward him again, eye structures focusing with unmistakable intent, Cale Voss made a decision that would ensure he never returned from this mission alone. The creature advanced. Cale did not fire. The predator moved with a deliberate economy that contradicted every exaggerated briefing Cale had ever read. It did not thrash or charge blindly. Each step cracked the earth with enough force to remind him of its mass, yet its balance was precise, its posture controlled. This was not rage given form. This was purpose. Cale steadied his breathing and kept his weapon lowered. His muscles screamed at him to act, to fall back on training and reflex, but instinct alone had kept others alive for seconds at best. He forced himself to observe instead. The creature's forward advance slowed as it closed the distance, its massive head angling slightly, as if adjusting its perception. One limb flexed, revealing a seam of damaged armor plates where older tissue had failed to fully regenerate. Was measuring him. Cale took one step backward, careful, unhurried. The predator mirrored the movement, not accelerating, not retreating. A strange symmetry formed between them, hunter and target locked in an exchange neither had expected. Cale let his rifle hang from its sling and spread his hands, palms outward, an ancient gesture that predated interstellar common languages. Another step forward from the predator, but lighter now. Testing. The ground beneath them pulsed once, a low vibration that traveled through Cale's boots and up his spine. He felt it less as sound and more as pressure, a frequency that rattled bone. The predator's chest cavity expanded, contracting with effort that betrayed strain. The damage Cale had glimpsed wasn't superficial. Whatever had wounded this thing had cut deep and recently. Cale made a choice that went against every contract he'd ever survived. He knelt. The movement drew an immediate reaction. The predator's limbs tensed, body mass shifting forward, ready to end the encounter in a single crushing strike. Cale froze at half kneel, hands still open, head tilted downward but eyes up. Submission without blindness. He stayed there, letting seconds stretch thin. They did not break. When the strike didn't come, Cale lowered himself fully, placing one knee and then the other against the scarred ground. He reached slowly to his side and detached a small medical canister from his belt, the casing scratched and patched like the rest of his gear. He rolled it forward. It came to rest several meters away, rocking once before settling. The predator did not move toward it immediately. Heat shimmered around its body. One massive forelimb lifted, then descended beside the canister, not touching it, just near enough that vapor rose as superheated tissue disturbed the air. Cale's internal display flickered back to life long enough to register a spike in exotic energy emissions. The creature wasn't scanning him with technology. It was sensing in ways he didn't have names for. Yeah, Cale said quietly, more to himself than to the thing in front of him. I don't understand either. The predator finally nudged the canister. Polymer melted at the point of contact, but the seal held. It drew its limb back sharply, a recoil that confirmed sensitivity if not pain. The chest vibration sounded again, this time stronger, charged with something Cale recognized not as threat but warning. Too close. He leaned back slightly, increasing the distance without standing. The predator adjusted with him, maintaining space. Its head lowered until it was level with his torso, eye structures rotating, focusing. Cale felt exposed in a way armor couldn't mitigate, as though layers of intent were being peeled back and weighed. Memory surfaced unbidden. Reports of captured predator footage, moments before complete signal loss, images of weapons dissolving mid-discharge, of pilots screaming as their own ships betrayed them. That reputation pressed against him now, heavy and earned. And still it did not kill him. Instead, the predator shifted its weight unevenly. A deep fissure along its flank split further, leaking dark fluid that hissed when it hit the ground. The creature compensated immediately, but the delay was there. Cale saw it. You should have let me leave, he murmured, aware of the absurdity of speaking aloud. "I'm terrible for plans." He crawled forward one measured movement at a time, stopping whenever the predator's posture stiffened. At arm's length, he halted again and pointed, not directly at the wound but at himself. Then he pointed toward the injury. It was a gamble built on nothing but stubborn pattern recognition. The predator's response came slowly. One limb shifted, blocking the wound from direct access. Another remained still, and the head angled sideways. Not refusal. Evaluation. Cale removed the glove from his left hand and placed it flat against the ground, skin exposed. Cold leached into his palm. He left it there, a small vulnerability offered deliberately. The predator's limb hovered inches away, heat washing over him, close enough that pain prickled along his nerves. It hesitated. That was the moment everything changed. No being that old, that feared, hesitated unless it saw something worth preserving. Cale leaned forward and extended his bare hand toward the damaged seam, stopping short, waiting. The predator's limb withdrew an inch. Permission, or the closest thing it could allow. Cale worked quickly once he started. The medical compound ignited on contact with alien tissue, stabilizing and sealing rather than healing, but even that arrested the leak. The predator's body tensed, vibrations rattling the air, but it endured. Cale focused on his task, refusing to flinch even as heat scorched his sleeve. When he finished, he pulled back and raised both hands again. Minutes passed. Nothing else moved. Then the predator stepped away. Not retreating. Not advancing. Simply creating space, as if acknowledging the transaction. Cale exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding and pushed himself awkwardly to his feet, every muscle trembling from sustained tension. They stood facing each other, no longer attacker and prey. Something else hovered between them, fragile, undefined but undeniably present. The planet rumbled softly beneath their feet, not with violence but with a deep, steady resonance. The predator turned its gaze toward the horizon, then back to Cale, and took a single step in the same direction. Not a command. An invitation. Cale followed. They traveled without urgency, yet covered distances that would have exhausted Cale within hours if he were alone. The predator set the pace, adjusting for him without acknowledgement, its long strides compressing when his breathing grew rough, its pauses coming just before he realized he needed them. It never looked back, but it always knew where he was. As the terrain sloped downward, the ground grew smoother, shaped less by destruction and more by repetition. Massive grooves scored the stone, worn by weight and time rather than violence. Cale understood then that this path was not a hunting ground. It was a route. A place the predator returned to, again and again, across centuries measured in survival. They reached a basin where the air vibrated constantly, a low resonance Cale felt in his chest more than his ears. At the center rose a structure that was not quite geological and not quite grown. Blackened spires curved inward, forming a shell around something unseen. The scars of past bombardments marred the outer surface, frozen mid-regeneration. The predator stopped. Cale did not approach uninvited this time. He waited, studying the way its massive form angled between him and the structure, protective without aggression. Understanding settled slowly, heavy and unavoidable. "This is what you were guarding," he said. The predator did not respond with sound. Instead, the vibration in the basin shifted. The resonance sharpened, piercing through Cale's armor dampeners and into his skull. His vision blurred, not from pain but from intrusion. Images pressed against his consciousness with startling clarity. Worlds burned by fleets bearing council insignia. Orbital strikes labeled as containment. Panic reframed as policy. Each image carried not hatred but weary inevitability, replayed so many times they had worn grooves into memory. Then came older visions. The predator younger, smaller, not alone. Others like it moved through a cosmos that had room for fearsome things without declaring them unacceptable. That era ended abruptly, consumed by species that believed survival meant erasure of threats rather than coexistence with them. Cale staggered and caught himself against a stone outcrop. The images persisted, gentler now. The core within the structure pulsed, a contained presence neither alive nor inert. It was dangerous, yes, but not malevolent. A naturally occurring anomaly, capable of unraveling space-time if disturbed, growing more unstable with each attempt to weaponize or destroy it. The predator had not wiped out civilizations as conquest. It had intervened. Those who approached with fear and force died first. Those who persisted died more completely. Silence followed because the alternative was annihilation on a scale even the council feared to name. Cale straightened slowly, breath shallow. "You stayed," he said, certainty replacing speculation. Someone had to. The predator turned its head, eye structures focusing on him, no longer assessing threat but measuring comprehension. Cale felt the resonance adjust again, weaker this time, tailored. You're alone because no one else would, he added. Because no one else survives long enough to listen. Something in the vibration shifted. Approval was the wrong word, but alignment fit better. Cale removed his helmet. The air was breathable, though heavy with charged particles that prickled against his skin. He needed nothing between them now. The truth deserved a bare face. I was sent to kill you, he said plainly. And if I don't return with proof, they'll send fleets. Worse ones than before. The predator's response came not as memory this time, but as sensation. Tightening. Anticipation of patterns long endured. It had anticipated this outcome the moment Cale arrived, perhaps long before. Guardianship was a cycle of repetition without end. There's another way, Cale continued. The idea had been forming since the first moment of hesitation between them. But it means trusting a species you have every reason to hate. He stepped forward, placing himself between the predator and the sealed structure in a deliberate inversion of roles. The resonance spiked briefly, then steadied. The creature did not intervene. I won't expose this place, Cale said. Not to them. Not to anyone who comes asking with weapons first. I can get you out of here or at least make them stop looking. Let me lie for you. Memory flickered again. Humans, brief and loud in the cosmic timeline, barely noticed before now. Their wars short, their lifespans insignificant. Yet here one stood, offering deception as protection rather than exploitation. The predator shifted, massive form angling forward until its head hovered just above Cale's. Heat washed over him, not scorching, just present. The vibration deepened, pressed, searching for fractures in resolve. Cale did not break. He thought of the council chamber, of cold calculations wrapped in solemn language, of contracts designed so no one had to admit failure. He thought of the basin behind him and the singular guardian who had chosen endurance over oblivion. The resonance receded. In its place came clarity. A connection, thin but real, coalesced between them. Not speech. Intent. If Cale betrayed this trust, the predator would not hesitate again. If he held to it, something unprecedented would follow. The creature lowered itself, immense body curling partially around the structure it protected, but not fully shielding it. An opening remained, just wide enough for Cale to walk alongside. It allowed him into its perimeter. Cale let out a breath that bordered on a laugh. All right, he said, soft and resolute. Then we do this my way. The ground trembled as the predator rose again, aligning itself with him rather than against the world. Together they turned toward the direction Cale had come from, toward the waiting galaxy, ignorant and afraid. For the first time in centuries the predator left its post. And for the first time in his life, Cale Voss understood that surviving the mission would be the least dangerous part of what came next. Cale knew the moment the first pursuit signal brushed against the edge of the system. The predator felt it too. Space itself tightened, the subtle pressure that came when too many artificial minds focused on one location with hostile intent. The council had never been patient. Interdiction fields sparked back to life around the planet as Cale and the predator moved through the upper atmosphere aboard Cale's salvaged lander, its hull reinforced hastily with plates torn from the predator's former nesting ground. Sensors screamed, then fell silent, overwhelmed by the same phenomena that had swallowed so many before him. Cale had counted on that. 3 strike vessels dropped out of slip space nearly on top of them, their silhouettes sharp and aggressive against the void. Automated targeting systems locked on, algorithms written to anticipate evasion patterns and converge with mathematically perfect efficiency. Against anything else it would have worked. The predator did not fly the way ships did. It tore through space's assumptions, manipulating the energetic distortions that cloaked its world, folding vectors into curves and acceleration into intention. Cale's stomach lurched as gravity lost its argument with motion. Lines became arcs. The predator surged forward, not cruising but asserting presence. The first strike vessel never fired. Its forward hull buckled inward as if compressed by an invisible hand, armor liquefying under pressure far beyond design tolerances. The ship collapsed in on itself, its command core crushed before a distress signal could form. Cale watched in stunned silence, awed despite knowing the creature's reputation. The others opened fire immediately. Lances of coherent energy carved through vacuum, intersecting where the predator had been moments earlier. It was no longer there. It reappeared above one vessel, mass casting shadow where shadow should not exist, and struck. Cale's role was not brute force. It never had been. He rerouted the lander's remaining power into broad-spectrum transmission and injected the channel with Council authentication codes he'd stolen years ago for reasons that hadn't mattered until this moment. The signal burst outward, impossible to ignore, its origin marked unmistakably as human. "This is Kale Voss," he said, keeping his voice steady as explosions lit the darkness behind him. "Freelance operative under Council contract designation Gamma Red 7. Mission status updated." Fleet commands hesitated. He could feel it in the pause between targeting recalibrations, in the brief flicker of indecision rippling through formations trained to respond instantly. Humans were variables, and variables slowed systems designed for certainty. "The Predator is not your enemy," Kale continued. "It's containing a threat you've failed to understand for centuries. Every fleet you've lost was the cost of your own arrogance." A transmission cut through his sharp and clipped, a Council controller asserting dominance through protocol. Kale overrode it with a partition cascade, drowning the command node in its own hierarchy. The second strike vessel detonated as the Predator severed its power core with surgical precision. Only one ship remained. It broke formation, engines flaring as its captain chose survival over orders. Kale let it run. Fear traveled faster than light through bureaucracies. One witness was more effective than 1,000 classified reports. Tracking markers disabled, Kale said quietly to the Predator, though he knew it already sensed the change. "They won't find this place again. Not easily." The Predator's bulk shifted as it stabilized its position, energy fields contracting. Kale felt the turbulence ease as the creature anchored itself near the system's boundary. For a moment, there was peace measured in absence, the shock of silence after violence. It did not last. Long-range sensors flared briefly, then died again. This time Kale didn't need instruments to understand what was coming. He felt it in the tightening of the Predator's posture, in the coiling readiness of a being that recognized escalation. A fleet arrived. Not a strike group, not deniable assets or contracted hunters. Council warships translated into the system in disciplined array, their sheer number warping local space. They did not open fire. They did not advance. They watched. Kale recognized the tactic immediately. Observation before annihilation. Data before destruction. He opened the channel again, this time wide, unfiltered, and routed it through every civilian relay he could hijack. Traders, smugglers, neutral observers on the fringes of Council space. Anyone listening would hear this. "You've been lied to," he said. Deliberately. Repeatedly. Imagery poured from his ship into the network. Sensor records from the basin. Energy analyses of the contained anomaly. Fragments of the Predator's memories, translated imperfectly but powerfully into visual proof of cause and consequence. Worlds lost not to predation but to Council decisions. The firing lines wavered. Orders came down, conflicting, layered panic bleeding through disciplined command structures. The Council could erase a lone mercenary. They could bury a failed mission. They couldn't easily silence a truth broadcast across half the trade lanes. The Predator drifted closer to Kale's lander, its presence looming, undeniable. It did not attack. It waited. Kale realized then that this was not about overwhelming force. The creature had never needed that. It had needed time. Time to endure. Time for someone to notice the pattern and break it. The first warship powered down its weapons. Then another. The pause stretched, fragile as spun glass. Kale stayed still, knowing movement might shatter it. He felt the bond between himself and the Predator tighten, not as leash or command but as shared stake. Whatever happened next would define them both. A single transmission cut through the network, marked with Council priority encryption. Not a threat. An inquiry. Kale smiled grimly and leaned back in his seat as the Predator held its position beside him, vast and patient. The galaxy was finally listening. And listening, Kale knew, was only the beginning. The Council's warships drifted in hesitant formation, unable to reconcile their orders with the evidence Kale had broadcast across every available channel. Their sensors confirmed it. The Predator remained unbound, yet obedient, no longer a mindless destroyer but a partner in strategy, a being whose intelligence outpaced entire fleets. Kale sat in the cockpit of his battered lander, chest tight, sweat slicking his hands against the controls, feeling every vibration of the Predator's immense body as it loomed just outside the hull. "You understand why this matters?" he said aloud, though he knew the creature sensed more than his words. Its perceptual structures focused, unblinking as if probing for his intent, not his speech. Kale continued, softer this time. "It's not just survival anymore. It's choice. Everything else follows from that." The Predator moved closer, its shadow folding across the cockpit. Kale's mind traced the countless histories, the records of fleets annihilated, of worlds scorched, and realized that those losses had been prevented in part by restraint, not by weapons. Humans had underestimated themselves for centuries. And yet here, in the silence between heartbeats, he saw what it meant to lead rather than dominate. Outside, the Council's remaining forces hesitated further. Kale knew they would not attack directly. To do so now would risk mutual annihilation not because of him, but because of the creature beside him. The Predator's presence was a living deterrent, a paradox of lethal power constrained by trust. It had survived not through blind aggression, but by endurance and adaptation, and Kale understood that endurance mirrored humanity's own cunning. He touched the console, sending a final communication. This ends now. Withdrawal. Immediate de-escalation. The Predator is not a weapon. It is a guardian. Reassess your mission parameters or risk total collapse. The channels erupted with static and fragmented chatter as fleets debated. Kale could feel the heat of indecision, the weight of centuries of arrogance cracking under pressure. The Predator shifted, a subtle but deliberate acknowledgement. Kale sensed it as much as he saw it. They were aligned not by chains but by choice. It exhaled through the resonant vents along its torso, the sound vibrating through Kale's armor and into his bones. Every instinct screamed caution, yet there was trust here, fragile but undeniable. Kale activated the lander's communications uplink one final time, directing his message to the outer colonies and trade corridors beyond Council influence. If anyone else heard of this, they would understand the truth. Humans could stand and sometimes stand alone, and in that courage they could shape alliances even with the galaxy's apex predators. The first ships powered down. Then another. Finally, the remaining Council flagship lowered shields, engines stuttering as its crew processed the unthinkable. The Predator obeyed a human. It did not kneel, it did not submit. It waited. It responded. And it chose Kale. Kale exhaled, relief cutting through the adrenaline. He turned his gaze to the creature beside him, its form immense and alien, yet impossibly attuned to him. He reached out, resting a hand against its side, feeling muscle, heat and vibration through layers of armor and flesh. The Predator's body shifted slightly, allowing the contact, a silent affirmation of the bond they had forged in fire, threat and mutual recognition. "You're not just a weapon," Kale murmured. "And neither am I." He felt a surge of something unfamiliar, pride perhaps, but tempered by the weight of responsibility. They had survived. They had convinced the galaxy to reconsider. But survival alone was not enough. They had to endure, together, and lead in ways others could not predict. From the distance, faint echoes of Council deliberation reached them. Kale knew they would not try again soon. The fleets were scattered, morale fractured, and the story of a human who befriended a being older than recorded history would spread faster than any fleet could move. His actions would ripple across star systems, inspiring whispers of possibility, challenging assumptions that had held for millennia. The Predator shifted again, this time moving to the lander's rear, scanning the void, its perceptual array catching patterns Kale could not see. He realized it was not just protecting him or the anomaly or even itself. It was ensuring the stability of the choice they had made together. The galaxy could not contain it, and in that recognition, Kale understood the paradox of power. The strongest need not dominate, they need only act with understanding and precision. He started the engines, preparing for departure. Beyond the horizon lay unknown systems, colonies unaware of the events unfolding, threats that had yet to emerge. Kale and the Predator would meet them on their terms, together, a human and a creature no one had expected to form an alliance. As the lander lifted, light from distant stars reflecting against its hull, Kale allowed himself a small, sharp smile. The Council had underestimated humans as always. And this time that mistake would be remembered. The Predator matched their trajectory, vast shadow against the expanse, a living testament to restraint and understanding. Kale exhaled again, slower this time, and whispered, "We're just getting started." And for the first time, the galaxy realized that humanity's greatest weapon was not its fleets, its technology, or even its cunning. It was its ability to choose, to endure, and to form bonds where none were expected. Together, Kale and the Predator disappeared into the void, an unbreakable alliance, leaving behind a galaxy forced to rethink every assumption, every strategy, every fear. In the silence that followed, only one truth remained clear. The hunter had chosen a human as its equal, and nothing would ever be the same again.